And my observation has always been when I looked at the side of the gym that had all the cardio equipment, I could see people maybe changing their size a little bit seasonally. They would just kind of look the same shape, but they might not take up as much space. Or if I looked at the weight section, people were completely changing their physique.
That is such a great perspective. And I couldn't agree more, but I think for so many people, and I will say, especially women, there's an intimidation factor. What if I do it wrong? What if I get hurt? What if I don't do it right? And so, opening the door literally to Pure Physique opened up that whole world to me where I was like, wow, I can lift heavy. I'm not going to get hurt. I am capable. And I'm telling you, within 2 weeks, of course, I was living with my parents. I'm in my early 20s, working as a teacher for the first time. I'm like, Dad, check out my arms, and he'd be like, wow, great job, hon. My mom is like, go set the dinner table. But it was amazing to see that physical transformation and then to continue to see that physical transformation. I mean, it was the first time in my life that my body actually changed. And I so appreciate you bringing this episode for more people to learn about the importance of resistance training because it's so underrated.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I would just add to that too. It's also understanding, because you brought it up, the nutritional component.
Yes.
I mean, how many people come to personal trainers or they go to a gym and their primary goal is to lose body fat? I mean, granted, there are so many things that are maybe more important than that, but yet that continues to be year in and year out the number one thing that we hear from people when they come and they're seeking our help. I want to lose fat. And you come to that realization that all the cardio in the world isn't going to get you there. And even all the resistance training in the world isn't going to get you there by itself. You need to address the nutritional component, because it's interesting when you look at the human body and how adaptable we are. And your body's primary goal is to always maintain homeostasis, right? It wants to stay the same. It wants to, have the least amount of disruption to the ship that it could possibly have. And so our bodies are just so great at adjusting to an increase in exercise. I mean, most people think like, oh, this is great. I'm gonna raise the volume on this exercise and I'm gonna burn more calories, not recognizing how well your body is at dialing down its need for you to consume more energy to meet your current energy demands.
That's right.
And once people start to all of a sudden have that aha, like, oh, you mean my body doesn't operate like a scale where it's, I put energy in and energy comes out, but that your body does operate more like a thermostat, where from a metabolic standpoint, it will adjust itself downward or upward based on your activity levels, based on your nutrition. And that is, really our job is to show people that there is no one size fits all approach to any of this. That's nutritionally, but most especially from an exercise perspective, you probably don't need to do as much as you think you need to do if your primary goal is fat loss.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's such a good point. And that's what really blew my mind. Again, people coming in doing intermittent fasting, their resting metabolic rate would be several hundred calories higher than it should have been. Their fat burns are through the roof. And these people weren't eating a lot of food. They just changed the type of food that they're eating. They're focusing on animal proteins, for example, and their metabolism was going through the roof and they were losing fat. Like you said, I love that you clarified that, because most people think they want to lose weight. No, they don't. They want to lose fat. So that's really important. And I completely agree. You have to have both the nutrition and the exercise piece together. So somebody might be listening to this and thinking like, okay, Mike and Corrie-Beth are talking about high intensity training. This is great. Let me type this into my search engine, beep, boop, beep. And you're going to see high intensity interval training. Okay, great. I guess I'll go do some of this. And you might watch videos or pictures and see people jumping around, jumping on boxes, throwing balls, special studios that they can sign up for and pay hundreds of dollars a month. And what amazing workouts. These guys are sweating all over the place. They're breathing heavily. Can you explain why it's a little bit lamentable that people will come across HIIT before they come across any work that talks about HIT?
Yeah, this is one that it's troubling for me to talk about, because the original source of high intensity training was resistance training. It was all weight training, and it was the simple way to define effort. When we talk about intensity, most people all of a sudden they recognize like, oh, that means effort. And within the realm of exercise, you know, resistance training really was at one time considered the most high effort activity that you could do, especially because you had individuals who were training to the point of momentary muscular fatigue. That means for the person listening, like they would perform an exercise to the point at which they could not perform another repetition. And you think you have 100 pounds on that bar, and you know you're doing those repetitions until the point at which you know your strength cannot match the weight on that bar. That means that you are working at the highest intensity level possible. But then over the past few decades, you know, the focus, and I think the focus really came out of a lot of research studies and laboratories that when they were testing exercise, it's easier to test exercise on the basis of endurance exercise because you could put somebody on a treadmill or on a bike, and you can test their capacity and you can test these measures. And so intensity from an exercise perspective started to be viewed through the lens of endurance exercise. And it was almost like they separated out weight training has nothing to do with this thing over here, right? And they don't, we know just even from the energy explanation I gave earlier, that it's the same thing, right? It almost doesn't matter whether you're lifting weights, you're doing aerobic exercise, you know, or sorry, endurance exercise. You can train at a high intensity and your body's going to go through these systems. So anyhow, unfortunately, what eventually happened is that endurance exercise got lumped in with what is considered high intensity exercise. And this is where you have the evolution of things like your boot camps, you have, you know, your Orange Theories of the world, where everything is very endurance-based exercise, but done at a relatively high intensity. So unfortunately, you go and type on Google high intensity training, and you get this high intensity interval training, which was the interval component was what was being tested in the labs. They would have individuals do a sprint for 30 seconds and then take 10 to 30 seconds off, and then do another sprint, and so on and so forth. And that regulating back and forth between the high intensity work and the low load work or low intensity work was called intervals. And so all of this kind of got lumped together. And that is the difficulty with us even describing what we do as high intensity training, is that people automatically have, you know, that association with, oh, is this CrossFit? Oh, is this boot camp? Oh, is this Orange Theory? It's like, no, we're none of that.
Well, what I would say to most people, right? He's the amazing science brain behind what we do and why we do it. And I'm the teacher that just tries to make it simple. I'm like, you guys know CrossFit? We're the opposite of that. You know, we want to move in a slow way, controlled and safe and all the things. And so I really appreciated walking in and seeing how important it was that we were maximizing every single movement and not just doing movement for the sake of doing a burpee. Because at the end of the day, what are we trying to accomplish and achieve? So yeah, it's crazy.